Hey, welcome back. We're fishing the Lough today. Now this is the 6th of October. I've been a bit shy on making videos of late, mainly because not a lot's been happening in my fishing that's been noteworthy. So the last time I made a kind of monthly update of what I was up to was, I think, way back in June. I went on holidays, came back, made an update, and I caught a really nice fish from my local water, Lyreen, 30 pound, 12 ounces, or 14 ounces I think it was. And yeah, that was my highlight. And then July was just a ball breaker. July and August, it was so hot and the fish just weren't really having it. And I lost a couple of fish, just didn't really get on them. And then come the end of August, there was a bit of a problem on the water where a number of fish started turning up dead. There's been a lot of investigation by the guys who own the lake, and I think we lost, you know, half a dozen fish, maybe a few more. And unfortunately my 30 pounder was one of the casualties. So that kind of dampened everything a little bit. The lake was closed for the whole month of September while they worked out what was going on. They sent away fish for lab tests and stuff. And basically I think what they came back was that, you know, the fish were just very, very stressed out due to high temperatures, and there was no sort of rhyme or reason to it. It just was one of those nature things that happens. Carp fishing's a fickle thing like that, you know, where fish are concerned. Same thing happened on this lake a number of years ago. This is the Lough in Cork, and this is a prolific fishery now. Back in its day, when I was fishing it heavily, it wasn't. If you ever wanted to catch a record carp, this is where you'd come to. This is urban fishing at its worst or best, whichever way you want to see it. And it's not that it's physically a hard water. Back in the day it was for other reasons, which I'll get into. But back in the day, this was you know, a ball breaker because it had a low stocking of fish. They were all very big, a lot of fish in the 20 pound mark, with a few upper 20s and one or two 30s. The Irish record is 29 pound 15, was caught here. There were bigger fish than that in here at the time. We'd seen them, and the Fisheries Board had done a test net, and they took out fish of 33 pound out of here and returned them. So yeah, about 10 years ago, an introduction was made of decoy strained fish. Now, decoy is another lake in Tipperary. The fish are very, very common carp dominant. There's very few mirrors in the batch, so hence now what we're catching here are peas in a pod, anywhere between 10 and 14 pound. They're all the same year class, and they're all commons. Great crack, but what happens when the fish went in here, a lot of the old biggies died off, and there are still a few originals knocking around, and luckily Mark managed to nobble one. It wasn't particularly big. It looks a very battered old warrior. It was about 11 pound in weight, and but you know, that said, it kind of is a bit of a privilege to catch something like that. So we've been fishing for, as I said, Friday night we arrived here at about 11 o'clock at night. And what Mark and I decided to do, we were going to, you have to tend to fish very closely together because of security, no other reason. It's, as I said, an urban environment. You get a lot of people at knocking out time at the pubs come along, and you can have a little bit of hassle at night. and during the day, you know, there's a lot of people walking around and a lot of people near your gear, so you kind of have to keep everything locked down tight. It is a nice fishery to fish from. I mean, it's concrete banks, it's very different from normal kind of fishing, but because there's a very prolific head of double figure fishing here now, it makes it for exciting fishing. Now, I've been very lucky. Whatever we did when we came, whatever spot I managed to get, I seem to be really in the bagging position, and I've had about 25, 26 runs now. I've lost about 5 fish, a couple of hook pulls, and one, the actual hook link snapped. But we're fishing chods here. This is, you know, chod fishing at its best. And I've been using very, very short chods, and it seems to be really, really working. As I said, I'm up to about 25, 26 runs now. The biggest I've had is 18 £10, and let me tell you, 18 £10, it was a lovely fish, and we'll show you that in a second. But yeah, it's when myself and Mark came down first, what we decided to do was we'd actually walk. Well, I got on my chesties and I went out into the lake to the furthest point I could go before the silt and the water became too much, and I scattered out a huge big bed. There was about 3 kilos worth of pellets, hemp, maize, corn, all bits and pieces. And one of the biggies that we were soaking them in was the, I'll show you now, it's the Marine 17 oil from, that stuff there, from Solar. And that stuff is absolutely wicked. Would we have caught the same amount of fish over the bed of bait without it? We don't know. But we put it on absolutely everything, and it really did seem to kick the swim off. That was Friday night. We baited up. We baited up again Saturday morning, and Saturday afternoon, when the runs had all calmed down and it had gone a bit quiet, we went out and rebaited again. And then last night, about 10 o'clock, we rebaited once more, and it's just gone dead now. It's the actual patch that was producing all the runs has stopped, and the roving rod over here has started producing. Hence, Mark now, because the bottom end where the wind is piling into, you'd think all the fish would be down, stacked up down here. They're not. They're pushing back up against the wind, and they're heading up towards the island. So what Mark has done is he's skipped me into the next peg, and he's whacking his baits out a fair distance out into the middle, and he's looking to catch, you know, the odd bonus fish. That's the thing about fishing you've got to do. You've got to adapt to what's happening in front of you. People come down with preconceived ideas, and you need to have a preconceived idea of what you're about. But you also have to have contingency plans, and also you have to watch what's happening on the water and adapt as it's happening. We came down with an idea that we wanted this bottom end of the lake. Reason being is we knew that there was going to be angling pressure at the top end, because we knew who was coming down, and they'd already said, oh, we're going to go to the spot that we were in the last time, because they'd had a really successful session. So I wanted to go further down, and we also knew that the wind was to change and push down south southerly or southwesterly into this corner, which it has done. And so myself and Mark had this idea that we'd fish 2 roving rods, we'd fish 1 rod on a baited patch and see, because up to this point anyone fishing has all been using very light baiting patterns and just single hook baits nearly on all rods, and no loose feed at all, and doing very, very well. What we wanted to do was we wanted to go against the grain. It's October, the fish need to get the old nose bag on now so that they can build up for winter. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a feeding zone that might draw in the fish, and it definitely made a big difference to us. The more baits we put out, we were using the stick and putting out 30-40 baits after each fish, scattered around the area, and you know, we've been through about 3 kilos, maybe 4 kilos of boilies scattered around in the swim, as well as topping up with hemp seed and all the other bits and pieces, the pellets that we've been using as well. This is one of the famous footballs from the Lough. Now, the decoy strain seems to produce an awful lot of these big, fat, football-y style fish. It's obviously a genetical thing, but some say they're ugly. I don't. I quite like them. I want to show you something. Come in here and have a look at this. we've been putting out a load of bait and it's crapping it out on my hand, if you can see that. Now, not only is that some natural feed in there, but there's also some of the krill bait that we've been putting out. So that's her, 12 7. But it's just been absolutely stunning fishing this morning. We're getting runs every hour, and sometimes, you know, quicker than that. It's just, it's one of those things, the more bait we're putting out, the more they seem to be switching on. So I'm going to get this one back and we're going to carry on fishing. Behave, behave, behave. This is the fox sling I've been using all year. It's the floating STR flotation system, and I have to be honest with you, I love it. It's absolutely, if you're going to retain a fish for any amount of time, yeah, if you're going to retain any fish for any amount of time, because it floats, it keeps everything safe. I'm ever so impressed with it. The water flow is really, really good. All in all, a cracking piece of kit from Fox. Some of the other bits of Fox gear I've had this year have been stunning as well, so I'm very impressed with it.
We did.
Missed the fish.
Oh, for God's sake.
Unlucky. I've been catching on sticky baits. Now, I'm a big solar fan and I always love using solar. Derek in Main Irish Angling brought in a load of the sticky baits krill, and he did very well here the last time, so I've decided to kind of give it a go, and I have to say, I absolutely think it's a cracking bait and it's one I will continue to use in the future. I've been using not only the krill pop-ups, but I've been using their buckerberry pop-ups, the big fluoro pink things, and in fairness, the buckerberry started off very slow. Everything was coming to the krills, and now, you know, last night I had 5 runs on the buckerberry, and you know, it's just really, really doing well. So confidence in a bag for me, yes, and that's what it's all about. As you know, Mark keeps reminding me, it's whether it makes sense to anyone else is irrelevant. If it makes you feel confident in what you're doing, and just do it, because confidence is everything in your fishing. If you're not confident, you're not going to fish to your optimum. So we've had a number of runs this afternoon. Nothing too big. Average size of the fish has got smaller, but then this turned up 18 pound 10 ounces. Very heavily scaled football of a carp. Absolutely beautiful though. stunning. I'm absolutely chuffed. This is my biggest carp from here in years. An 1810 Irish carp is not to be sniffed at by any means. Absolutely stunning. Doesn't really get much better than this. Came on the sticky baits again, krill doing the job. Fished on a chod with an ace hook, and very short chod though. The actual hook length is only 1.5 inches long, maybe even less. So there you go. I'm going to get this one back now.
Well, just let me get close-ups of the scales.
So let's have a look at the rig that's been doing the damage on this trip. Basically, it's a real simple rig. This is a chod rig. Now, chod rigs by their very nature are quite simple. Basically what I was doing, I was fishing a 3-foot lead core section. Now this happens to be the Corda helicopter rig ready-made, and it's perfect for the chod. And to be honest with you, I usually knock up my own very simply, but it was just as handy to use these. They're as good as I'm going to tie, and very functional. So the whole principle of a chod rig is you're not looking for the lead to bury in too deep into the chod or the silt. So you want as light a lead as you can. Now this is a 2-ounce Tasca flat pair, and very important that when you pull down the buffer bead onto the swivel there, that you have a little bit of movement. You don't put it all the way down so it's tight, so it's rigid. And you need that so that when that buries into the silt, there's still a bit more movement for this to settle on top of whatever debris is out there. Now, the lake we're fishing here is very silty. It's quite gravelly as you walk out, but then you hit a point where you can't walk any further because it's like, you know, a foot, 1.5 foot, 2 foot of silt. And the top layers of the silt is quite soupy. It's very, very light, soft silt. So what I did was, there's a barrel here on the rig that is designed that you use it right down by the lead, and it just stops the hook from actually bouncing off the lead and blunting. But what I was doing was I was moving that barrel all the way up to about a good, well, beyond halfway, maybe even a little bit more. And the reason being is I wanted this amount to dig into that silt, because I knew, as I said, it was about a foot, foot and a half deep. So I've gone to about 2 feet that I know is going to bury into that silt. And I wanted the chod then to sit very loosely on top of whatever debris or very soupy silt is out there. And then I put the top bead about 3 inches away from the actual knot. And I found this was actually working very, very well for me. It gave me the optimum hookups and runs. Now the chod rig itself is very, very simple. Again, you can use the pre-tied ones by quarter if you want, but I would advise you that you should actually, you know, get to the grips of tying these, the fiddly, the whipping knot that you have to employ. You can find it on YouTube. There's Gardener Tackle have Lewis Porter actually talking about the whipping knot, and he demonstrates it very, very well. It's a real fiddly knot, and it's not something that everyone can do straight off. It takes a lot of practice. It took me probably the guts of 9 or 10 of these being tied up before I started to get the hang of it. Now I can do it no problem. It's not an issue, but it is fiddly to start off with, and you need to learn these things. So I decided I'm going to tie up my own ring. So I have a size 8 swivel ring swivel. The ring actually goes on the lead core. The swivel then stands up. We have about 1.5 inches, maybe, yeah, about 1.5 inches of the chod filament. This is the chod filament from Kildare called Mouthtrap. This is a 20-pound breaking strain. Absolutely wicked gear. I've used a few different ones, and that's my favorite, because the reason being is once it's tied, you can then mold it and it'll hold onto the shape. Now I like to put a big strong curve on that, and there's a reason for that. When it sits in the bottom and the pop-up is on top, it puts the hook in the optimal hooking position, that when it goes down and takes it, it nails it in the bottom lip most times. The other thing I'm using is a bait screw here. This is a Tasca bait screw. Ace do their own bait screws, and I've tried them, but I didn't get on with the Ace ones because I found that the pop-ups that I'm using, these are the krill sticky baits krill pop-ups, and I was using the bucaberry ones as well. I find that they're quite delicate, the pop-ups, and what can happen is as you chuck out on the short fat Ace ones that, you know, they're quite wide, the screws, and they don't go in too far, the baits were popping off and falling off in flight. Not so with the Tasca ones. These are a little metal screw that go all the way up, and they have their own ring at the end which you can use as your D-ring. Now I'm going to do a close-up on this, and bear with me because it takes a little bit of time for the camera to focus in. Right, there it is. There's the bait screw, and so then you just take your boilie and you just screw it in all the way up to the point there of the actual D-ring, and that's it, ready to go. It's locked in, and these don't come off. These are brilliant. And as I say, I'm just going to take it out so you can see it again, and that's the actual bait screw itself. I'll put it against my hand, you'll see it better. The Tasca ones for me are simplicity itself. They really are fantastic, and what I like about them is they're nice and long, and they really lock the bait in. And also the fact that they have the built-in ring at the end means you don't have to worry with other bits and pieces. So thumbs up for Tasca on that one. By the end of the session, I was using little micro rings on the actual D and tying them on with bait floss because I'd actually run out of bait screws. And yeah, worked fine for me, absolutely great. So I find out the simplicity of the actual bayonet here is the screw is just so much easier. So this was the fish I had last night, the biggest out of my 5 fish. This one weighed 15 pound 1 ounce. This is the reason why people come down here to the loch. They're able to hook into multiple catches of fish, topped up by some nice mid-double to high double fish if you're lucky. It's a stunning fishery. It has a lot of issues being an urban environment, but do you know what? It's worth the trip, and if there's a couple of you coming, you won't have any problems. Now, hooks. The Ace hooks I'm using here, that's the size 8 choddy hook, and I found it fine. It caught me a number of fish, but I was more happy using the size 6 extra strong continental one. It looked better proportion to the bait. Now, I'm sure if I'd up this to a size 6 or a size 4, I know saying size 4 sounds really, really heavy, but the choddy hooks are tiny in comparison. Like, that's a size 8 and it actually looks like a 12 or a 10. It's tiny, tiny hook. Super sharp, super strong out of the packet, and they take, you know, a little buffing up, no problem as well, as I was doing at the weekend. One thing, as I said, I like to do is I like to put a real strong curve on that with my thumb by holding the swivel and my hook bend in one hand, and then use my thumb just to kind of keep pushing this like so. It'll take on a bend like that, and what that does is it puts it into the optimum position for the fish. When they go down to suck it, it nails them in the bottom lip. So that's the rig, real simple. So, you know, straight out the packet, a lead core leader from Kildare, the helicopter style one. A small lead. Now, usually when you're using chod, you want to be, you know, an ounce lead if you can get away with an ounce lead. And the lighter the lead, the better. I had to go up to about 2 ounces because of the crosswind I had here. To get out the 60 odd yards I was casting, it's the only way I could do it was to put on a slightly heavier lead. The heavier lead more digs in, so be aware of that. And then, yeah, as I said, just fishing the chod right up to, you know, through in the last third of the actual rig seemed to make all the difference, and put an awful lot of fish on the bank for me. So that's it, that's the rig section done. Enjoy the rest of the video. weight was that, lads?
14.
14.
14 and a few ounces.
And your name, young man, is?
Daniel.
Daniel. And Daniel, what age are you?
8.
8 years old, and you have a 14 pounder like that. Wow. Is that your biggest now?
Yeah.
Your PB. Well done, mate. 17 pound, 4 ounce common. One of the last commons of the trip, last knockings.